Following on from a video that we did recently where we spoke about data breaches.
Data breaches. Have you had one? Have you had a data breach? Are you a business owner and you've had a data breach? It's really scary.
And how a cyber attack and data breaches and the thought of having your data in somebody else's hands is worrying. And I get it, I'm a business owner. So what can we do to detect and protect and avoid these problems? So let's break that down a bit. So you could put a intrusion detection system in place, an IDS in place, so that it can observe your network and monitor it for any suspicious type of activity. You can have a security information and event management system tools that can aggregate and analyze the logs from various sources to see what data is moving around and where it's going and what's happening to it. You can make sure that you do regular audits and conduct regular audits on your system to make sure that your data is safe and secure. You should have endpoint security in place. Endpoint security is one of the minimal things that you should have across all of your devices to protect from malicious activity or from malicious links. You can do file integrity monitoring. You can use software to monitor critical files so that you can understand what's happening with it. User behavior analytics. So you put in software in place so that it monitors the behavior and how users use data, so that if a user is logging in late out of hours, or if a user is suddenly going into data that they don't normally go into. So you can put a data loss prevention tools into place that monitors the movement of data and the manipulation of data. You should always do regular updates and patch management. Under cybersecurity and cyber essential certifications, you have to have done the updates and patch management on your systems within 14 days of them being released from the manufacturer. This is something that you should all have in place as a baseline or as part of your baseline security preferences. Prevention, multi-factor authentication. Have multi-factor authentication put in place on your system across all of the systems that are accessing or are the accessibility to your data. So if a user needs to use an email address and password or a username and password to log into any one of your systems, if the ability to have multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication is there, put it in place as one of your baseline securities. Incident response plan. You should all have an incident response plan. This lays out what is expected by all parties involved if an incident happens, so that you have a way of either getting back your data or a way of handling the incident that might occur. This allows you to have the right team in place to handle it, so that you have cybersecurity professionals involved, you have your IT team in the plan, you have your management team and your staff, so that when something happens, they know what to do. One of the things that we do quite a lot for our clients is a thing called a nuclear submarine test. So there's a thing called a nuclear submarine test where a brand new nuclear submarine that comes out, they will take a crew out in it, and they will turn everything off so that submarine sinks to the ground to see how the crew reacts and to make sure that they're following their response plans when something happens. We do the same in cybersecurity and IT. We do a nuclear submarine test for our clients where we will go in without minimal people in the company knowing what's going to happen, and we will take down one of their major services. Not to cripple the business, but to see how the users will respond, and if they follow the incident response plan and get themselves to the next stage. Avoidance. How do you avoid these problems? You might have seen some of my videos where I banged on about this, and it's one of the things that I can't get over enough to people is employee training. Train your staff.
Train your staff. Give them some training, even a basic level of training. Give them some training.
They are your defense line against all the malicious and the baddies out there. The amount of companies we talk to that do no cybersecurity training, no incident response plan training with their team, no nuclear submarine tests. You need to train your staff so that they can help you to fight against all the different types of attacks that can come at business data. Least privilege access. Yes, least privilege access. What does that mean? It means that you give as little access as is required for any member of your team or accessor of your data to be able to do what they need to do. Don't over give them data, as in access. Don't say to them, oh yeah, you need access to these files, so we're going to give you it to the whole folder system if you don't need to. One of the key principles behind cybersecurity is the minimum amount of access possible to any one user. So if a user doesn't require access to folder sets A, B and C, they only require access to folder set D, give them access to folder set D only and nothing else. If they require one file out of folder set B but only one file, find a new location for that file into somewhere that they do have access, so you don't have to give them full access to folder set B in order to give them one file. Data encryption, another one of the ways to avoid having your data stolen or having a data breach, is encrypt your data at rest and in transit. Encrypting your data at rest and in transit means that even if somebody does get their grubby little hands on them, they can't do anything with it because it's encrypted. So a long while back, the NHS in the UK had a ransomware attack. Basically what a ransomware attack does on any company is it encrypts that data and only they have the key to unencrypt that data. So to you, if your data is ransomware, you can't access any of it. You can't use any of it. So encrypt your data so that you have the key to it and that you can access it in transit and at rest, so that if somebody does maliciously get their hands on it, they can't do anything with it. Regular backups. You need to do regular backups of your data. Why? So that if you do end up with a ransomware, or if you end up with a corruption or a deletion, as in somebody stole your data and deleted it, you have copies of it so that you can carry on working. Make sure you've got firewalls in place. A firewall is another defense line that you can have in place in your system, or on your network, should I say, so that it helps protect intruders from getting into your data in the first place. Firewall is sometimes they can be expensive, but they can also be cost effective because it's like an insurance plan. If you can put another blockade in place, your car, you have an alarm on your car, right? So that it's safe. Insurance companies will give you a lower premium if your car has an alarm and has an immobilizer. You can get a lower premium. Firewall is another layer of protection, and it is one of the layers of the onion that we put in place in cybersecurity to protect your data. VPN networks. Require your users to use a VPN to get into your network. So if they need to access files or folders or systems that are on your network, give them a VPN so that they are inside your network. It not only protects your data from outsiders, but this also gives a level of security to your users when they are working inside your network, that they're in a clean network. You could be on a Costa Coffee Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, turn your VPN on, you're connected, you're nice and secure. If you're a developer and you develop third-party softwares, or you have anything along software line for your clientele, make sure that you've got secure development practices in place, that they're written down, that you know what the practices are that you are going to do. I speak to so many developers that develop software for clients of mine or for other clients of their own, who don't have a written down process plan, response plan of how they develop, how they release their development. And not having that, they don't know what levels of security they put in place for their development. Do vendor risk management. Vendor risk management is where you assess the security of the third-party vendors that you use, could be anything in your company that you use. If you rely on a third-party vendor for any aspect of your business, make sure you've done a risk assessment on them, that you've done a vendor risk management assessment. Why? If the malicious people out there want to get to the big fish, and if you're a big fish out there and they want to get your data, they're not, majority of the time, not going to come directly at you. What they're going to do is go to the third-party, smaller vendors who maybe don't have enough money to put into cybersecurity, or maybe don't have the best practices in place, and they will attack them to get to you. And if you're one of those smaller third-party vendors, you need to be putting protections in place to protect you and your data and your clients' data, so that they can't use you as a conduit to get through. Put security measures in place. Make sure that you're doing risk assessments with your third-party teams. No matter what they're providing to you, do a risk assessment so that you know how they handle the data that they have about you. And especially if, as a company, you're sharing data with them, make sure you know what their level of risk is so that you can put this into your process to protect yourselves. Physical security. Make sure that your systems, physical access to your systems, your servers, your data centers is as controlled as possible. A bit like earlier on when we were talking about giving as little access as possible to your data. It's the same with the physical location. So if you're keeping your data in a third-party data center, make sure that you know what the data center's response plans are, what their level of security is, what level of data center you have your data in, and what their rules and terms are on how they look after your data. Because at the end of the day, as the business owner, the buck stops with you to know exactly how your data is being treated. Another way to help avoid having these problems is compliancy. Make sure you're compliant. Make sure you're compliant with GDPR. Make sure you're compliant with Cyber Essentials. Even if you're not going for a Cyber Essentials certification, make sure that your levels of security are compliant with its rules, because that way you add another layer of protection to your systems that malicious parties are not going to be able to get to your data. Do regular security assessments. So to avoid having a data breach or losing your data, do regular security assessments, either through your own IT department, through an outsourced company. Get an outsourced company to come in and do an assessment, and then in 6-12 months time have another assessment done, just to make sure that you've, one, answered all the questions from the first assessment, and two, you are still protecting your data. And if needs be, you can get a third company to come in to do an assessment to make sure that the data marries up. How important is your data to you as a company? If you lost your data, can you still function? Because if you can still function and you've lost your data, brilliant. But if you're like me as a company owner, and without your data, you would be very hard pressed to be able to function as a company, then you need to make sure that you are doing everything that is within your power to make sure that that data is secure and kept safe. Incident response drills. One of the things, like making sure that you've got a response plan in place and training your staff, you need to do incident response drills. What do I mean by an incident response drill? You've got your response plan. You know what you've got written down if something happens. Practice it. Make something happen that is within your control and see how the response plan works. Does every step in the response plan work as seamlessly as it should be, or is there a bottleneck? Is there an improvement that can be made, an efficiency, a cost saving that can be made, a time saving that can be made? One of the key points in any response to an incident is the time that it takes to do it, how quickly you can respond, and how quickly you can plug that hole from where your data is being. So that's detection and avoidance, and trying to help you a little bit to at least be able to put some protection in place and some avoidance in place, ways to avoid having the problem in the first place. If you can put some of those things, or if not all of them in place, you're going to be on a much better footing to be able to protect your data, your client's data, and any personal data that you hold. Hope that helps.